This is a complete crime against the civilians. What we have seen is a kind of progress in the Israeli crime against the Lebanese. It's against the Lebanese people, it's against the civilians. We hold the Israeli enemy responsible for all of the victims, for all of the martyrs, for all of the wounded, and we believe that the reprisal is coming.
Hezbollah had recently started using pagers rather than mobile phones because they're considered less vulnerable. This attack will have a considerable psychological effect on the group.
So this could have been a hack on the lithium batteries to cause it to explode, but it looks more like explosive devices implanted in this, which would indicate a large supply chain interruption where they're able to intercept these packages, these pagers, implant explosives, and then being able to leverage that to then conduct these types of operations. This is, a very complex, highly sophisticated, probably multi-year type of engagement that would require this type of thing to be pulled off, one of the most complex that I've seen ever.
Israel has repeatedly demonstrated its ability to infiltrate deep into its enemies. In November 2020, they assassinated a senior Iranian nuclear scientist using a remote-controlled machine gun that targeted his vehicle near Tehran. And in late July of this year, Israel killed a high-ranking Hezbollah commander, Fuad Shukr, with a drone strike on his apartment. Only a few hours later, they took out the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh with a bomb under the bed in the guest house where he was staying in Tehran.
I think that it is actually a point of deflection. It is such a serious attack. It's not only extraordinary, it's also very scary. And I think this time we can expect a very serious response, a retaliation from Hezbollah, and in all likelihood also from other proxies of Iran.
This latest attack happened on the same day that Israeli security officials revealed that they had uncovered an attempt by Hezbollah to assassinate a former senior Israeli military officer using a remotely detonated bomb. Like so many of the details, it is unclear whether the timing of the pager attack was directly connected to this or already in motion as part of Israel's ongoing conflict with Hezbollah. The number of injured is huge, and Hezbollah has vowed retaliation. Tonight, Benjamin Netanyahu has convened an emergency security cabinet meeting to prepare for what happens next. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Jerusalem.
So the big question really is, how is this even possible? And of course, who is responsible? Sky Security and Defence Editor Deborah Haynes has been speaking to her sources. Have a listen.
The leader of Hezbollah, he has advised his fighters to move away from using mobile phones and start using pagers as a way to avoid being tracked by Israel. And this security expert was saying that what could have happened is that these pagers could have been tampered with before they were then put in the hands of the Hezbollah fighters. And he was saying potentially explosives put inside these pages. Now, this does sound like it's out of some kind of sci-fi movie, but this security expert was saying that it would then be possible to send a signal to these pages that would then trigger the detonation. And he said the fact that so many pages have been impacted within a time frame, that would indicate that potentially that is what's happened.
There are currently a lot of theories that are floating around, but at a time of such heightened tension, especially in the region, the finger of blame is, certainly on Hezbollah's side, as well as the Lebanese government itself. The information minister has pointed the finger of blame at Israel.
While there hasn't been any confirmation from the Israeli side, that is common in these kinds of hybrid deniable attacks that have really framed the conflict between the shadow war between Israel, Iran and Iran's proxies such as Hezbollah. And if you look back at Israel's track record, it has used unusual, unconventional ways to attack its enemies. For example, there was an Iranian scientist who was killed using a remotely controlled gun. There was also a cyber attack, a huge cyber attack against Iran's nuclear facilities, the Stuxnet virus, which has widely been attributed to Israel. And so it's no surprise that Israel is in the frame for this unprecedented attack against hundreds of pages.
Indeed, you know, there's been a lot of talk over the last, frankly, almost a year about escalation in the region, and certainly the conflict between Hezbollah and Israel has been monitored very closely. I guess the next question is, with the region on edge, how are we likely to see Hezbollah react and respond to this?
It's an extraordinarily dangerous moment. The kind of, if it is confirmed that this attack on these pages was carried out by Israel, it's clearly it's been designed to be an attack that it's not like missile strikes or direct troops coming across the border to target Hezbollah fighters. Instead, it's been this unconventional kind of warfare, remotely targeting pages, blowing them up, not leaving behind any traces to be able to be clearly linked back to Israel with hard evidence. However, the scale of the damage, with several people killed, thousands of people injured, could likely meet the threshold of what Hezbollah could regard as an act of war potentially, which of course is going to cause huge concern about the possibility for this being the trigger to escalate into all-out conflict between Hezbollah and Israel, which is something that world leaders have been desperately trying to contain for months now.
That was our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, speaking there. Well, I'm joined now in the studio by Professor Alexander Evans, former Director of Cyber at the Foreign Office. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us here on the programme. On the one hand, this is incredibly audacious, this attack, and unprecedented. On the other hand, I mean, you sort of think this is a terrible blunder on Hezbollah's behalf.
Yes, I mean, it certainly looks like a major security breach by Hezbollah. It sounds like they had switched from using mobile phones because of their concerns about surveillance and interception to use this pager system, but it turns out not to have been a very secure system to use.
I guess, the question is the level of infiltration that we realise that whoever it might be, and of course the Lebanese government, Hezbollah, pointing the finger of blame at Israel at this point, and the Israelis may never come out and admit or deny or anything. But you realise the kind of infiltration that must have taken place.
Well, I think the scale of this, the fact it's so many devices at one moment. We'll obviously wait to see what the forensics and specialists tell us about how it happened, whether it was a cyber attack using these devices, whether explosives have been inserted into the devices as part of a supply chain as Hezbollah purchased them. But in either case, the scale reflects a capability and an audacity to do it at one moment, at one time. There is something we should consider here, that whoever's been responsible for doing it, they're unlikely to be able to do it again with the same method, because you're also exposing the fact that you have that access to those devices.
But I guess on Hezbollah's part, what we're seeing here is a lack of skepticism. On the one hand, they've moved away from mobile phones because they're worried about interception. On the other hand, they've completely exposed themselves with this, when you think about the scale and the number of people.
It does, and I think it reflects the fact that for all of us, human beings, for governments, for armed groups, for terrorist groups, we're all dependent on modern technology devices to communicate. And we want to maintain that ability to communicate all the time, 24/7. That you see Hezbollah having switched to pagers, there's still that dependence, and that dependence turns out to be a vulnerability.
Indeed. I mean, that is the point here, isn't it? I mean, these sort of militia groups and the way that they operate, I mean, they're going to have to rethink their supply chains, where things come from, how they operate, what they use. I mean, all that will have to be scrutinised now.
Yes, and I think that's part of the dynamic in these conflicts, right? Each side is trying to gain comparative advantage over the other. Each side is going to use technology to try and protect its own integrity, but also to undermine the opponent's integrity. And when new technologies are used, there's almost invariably an opportunity to exploit them as well.
Are we seeing, we keep talking about escalation in the region, but it does tend to feel like, these things lead to a sudden shift. Something can move very quickly when something like this happens.
Yes, so certainly there is concern about escalation, and some of the rhetoric that we've already heard today indicates concern about that, for example, from the United States, but also quite strong statements both from Hezbollah and from the Lebanese government as well. We haven't heard anything from Israel. We haven't heard anything from Iran. And we know that amidst this conflict, particularly the escalation of conflict over the last year, there have also been contacts, negotiations, efforts to move towards some form of at least ceasefire or settlement. How this affects that dynamic remains unclear.
Are we likely to hear from any side?
Well, I think there has been a tradition of some states in the region choosing to say not very much, but choosing to let the actions or the events speak for themselves. The scale of this attack on the Hezbollah network and personnel in Lebanon sends a very strong signal. The fact that the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon reportedly was involved as well and has been injured is also a sign that we should watch, because that could be used for escalation if Iran wishes to engage.
So what exactly would security analysts and experts be analysing and looking at right now? What would they be watching closely when we are seeing this region on the edge in this way?
Well, look, one of the key things is to what extent is there an appetite for escalation from Hezbollah, from Iran, to respond to this attack, but also what effect does it have on the dynamic of negotiations that might be taking place behind the scenes, both on that conflict between Hezbollah and Israel, but also on the conflict between Hamas and Israel. And those are sensitive areas where clearly another incident of this scale may drive forward the potential for negotiation, but it may also drive forward escalation. And that will very much depend on the actors in the region and how they choose to respond.
Yeah, because when we see something like this, first of all, people I was speaking to, you sort of suddenly think, pages? Really? People still using these devices? And I guess they, in their minds, thought it would be safer than a mobile phone, which is also, in effect, a tracking device as well.
Yes, I think we forget that we're carrying around now devices that show where we are, who we talk to, how we consume information, what our networks are. But in this instance, it shows that these devices can be weaponized potentially to kill or maim as well. And there is a history of devices being used like this. Israel was allegedly involved in the 1990s in using similar technology to attack a Hamas bomb maker. So it is plausible and possible that devices can be used. What we're seeing today is at scale an example of that becoming true.
Yeah, really quite extraordinary when you see and witness something like this at this scale, so unprecedented, and also, as we were saying, a sort of blunder on Hezbollah's part. Professor Alexander Evans, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, just as the news was coming in out of Lebanon, I sat down with Saudi Arabia's ambassador to the UK. I asked Khalid bin Bandar Al Saud for his reaction. Have a listen. I just want to begin with the news that we've heard about some pages that have exploded, and we've seen a number of casualties of Hezbollah fighters. I mean, things are really ratcheting up in the region. I just wanted to get a sense of your reaction to all of that and what's been going on.
It's currently a bit too early to have an opinion on what happened. Information hasn't filtered back. It certainly looks unusual for so many devices to have a fault at the same time, in the same fault, but it is not a positive sign of where the conflict's going.
Ambassador, I'm just being told that the Lebanese information minister says that the Lebanese government condemns the pages that were detonated in Lebanon, those on the Hezbollah fighters, as Israeli aggression.
We'll have to look at that as information comes out. It's very early days. I don't have the information to answer a question about that, but it's an extraordinary world we live in.
And you're worried about the state of your region?
without question. If I wasn't, I'd be foolish. You know, a conflict that spreads beyond where it is, spreads to the region. If it spreads to the region, it spreads to the world. And that's not a scenario that anyone wants to see. And we don't have enough ability to apply pressure to hold that in the box if it comes out of the box. I think that's a worst case scenario, but the fact that it is a possible scenario means we have to focus hard on stopping it from happening, because a world war is not something anyone needs. We have enough conflict in the world. We don't need to add to it.
That was the Saudi ambassador to the UK, and you can tune in tomorrow at 9 p.m. for my full interview with the Saudi ambassador. And we've just got some breaking news that's come in the last few minutes. We have been reporting that 9 people were killed in that pager explosion today. But we have an update now. We understand from the Lebanese authorities that 11 people were killed by those exploding pagers. And we were also reporting that there were 2,700 injuries. That number has gone up to 4,000 injured now. So that is coming from the Lebanese Health Ministry, reporting that 11 people are now dead and 4,000 injured. We are monitoring this story very closely. And as we get more updates on the injuries and death toll, we will be bringing those to you. Now, I want to shift your focus on 2 very different public cases that reflect a problem now at epidemic levels. Let's talk first about this woman, Gisèle Pellicotte. Her story is harrowing. Over a decade, her husband repeatedly drugged her and invited up to 50 men to rape her. Today, she confronted him as he admitted his crimes in court. In a moment, we'll hear why women in France are rallying behind her. But first, Alice Porter reports from Avignon.
Arriving in court to face the man accused of masterminding mass sexual abuse against her for over a decade. 72-year-old Gisèle Pellicotte thought she was in a normal, loving marriage. But unbeknown to her, she was being drugged by her then husband, assaulted by him, and allegedly raped by more than 50 strangers. 71-year-old Dominique Pellicotte is accused of recruiting the men online, inviting them to the couple's home and filming them abusing his wife while she was unconscious. At a court in Avignon, Pellicotte gave testimony for the first time and admitted all the charges against him. Today, I maintain that I am a rapist, like the others concerned in this room. They all knew her condition before they came. They knew everything. They cannot say otherwise. Of his ex-wife, he said, she did not deserve this. Gisèle's decision to go public about her ordeal has prompted a national conversation about drugging someone without consent in order to assault them. An anti-drugging campaign is being led by the French MP Sandrine Josso, who was also spiked by someone she knew.
When someone's drugged, if the drugs that are used are sedatives, it's impossible to have a debate about consent, because somebody who's asleep is incapable of giving consent.
Most of the men on trial deny having raped Gisèle Pellicotte, claiming that Dominique Pellicotte made them believe they were taking part in the couple's sexual fantasy.
If we listen to Pellicotte, the consent never happened and the rapes took place. That is his position.
The men who came to the couple's home were allegedly told by Dominique Pellicotte to not wear aftershave or smoke. Some of the defendants say they were told by Dominique this was because he didn't like the smell. They didn't necessarily think that these were steps to stop Gisèle from finding out what was happening to her. There are still men who took part in the alleged rapes who have yet to be identified. The trial will go on until December and will continue to horrify those in France and abroad.
And Alice joins me now. And as you say, Alice, a horrifying case there and an admission in court today from the man at the centre of all of this.
Yes, it was an explosive testimony from Dominique Pellicot. It's the first time that we've heard his testimony in court, where he's admitted to all the charges against him. He's admitted to drugging his wife, rendering her unconscious. He's admitting to raping her himself and admitted to inviting multiple men to come over. And he says that those men in question, the 51 co-defendants who are on trial at the moment, he alleges that they knew what was happening was rape, but the majority of those co-defendants have said that they didn't know that she hadn't given consent. The majority of them have said that they thought what was taking place was part of a sexual fantasy between the couple. And it is, of course, a case that has really shocked France across the country and, of course, has led to a lot of global condemnation as well.
Indeed, very much so. And Giselle Pellicot herself, you know, day in, day out, sitting just meters away from those who have been alleged to have, you know, attacked her in this way.
Yeah, very early on, she waived her right to anonymity, which means this trial is being held publicly, which is very unusual. And it's meant that it's very much shone a light on a number of issues, such as marital consent, chemical submission, and the issue very much of consent. And as you were just hearing there from the piece, the issue of chemical submission is what the term used in France for spiking, rendering somebody unconscious through drugs. And I think particularly what has been, I think, so alarming to so many people watching this case is that Giselle was drugged by someone she knew. And so often we think of spiking as being something that happens when people are out and about in nightclubs. But in her case, this was something that happened by someone she knew in her own home. And that is something that has shocked so many people and will continue to do so over the next few months as this trial continues.
Indeed. Alice, thank you so much for bringing us up to date there. Well, let's speak now to radio host Anna Tumazov, who organised one of those protests in Paris. Thank you very much, Anna, for joining us. I mean, this is a case that is so horrifying, you know, that's really shocked not just the French people, but sort of caused international condemnation, and rightly so. But our correspondent Alice was saying, you know, usually when we see these sorts of spiking rape cases, it's done by not necessarily someone you know, but over the course of almost 10 years.
Yeah, that's actually very shocking. There is like French people are very shocked. There were protests all around France, and it's because I think people are always very shocked when there is that kind of actually terrible crimes. But in this case, as you said, the most terrible thing is that is the husband who choose to give his wife to all these men who accepted to come and to rape this sleeping, comatic woman.
Yeah, and you know, something that you have said is that these men who've been accused of these alleged attackers look like regular men anywhere.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrible, actually. Like it's the first time in France where everybody is acknowledging that they are not like monsters. They are very regular men. We all have seen their faces all over social networks. We have seen that they got very different ages, very different jobs, very different familial situations. And yeah, that's really frightening to see like these men are among us. They are like our husbands, brothers, friends. That's really terrifying.
Yeah, and as we said, you were behind organising one of the protests. But I guess, you know, we should talk about the wider issue around sexual violence in France, because this is obviously not an isolated case, not in France and not globally.
Yes. In France, we really have a problem with rape culture. That's something very evident, as only one rapist out of 100 is coming to jail, and is punished. So this is a very big problem. But I think that this problem, as you said, is wider, and it's not only in France, unfortunately.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Anna Tumazov, we're grateful that you've joined us. Now stay with us. After the break, the downfall of one of the most influential figures in hip-hop, how Sean Diddy Combs was arrested and indicted on charges of sex trafficking and racketeering.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent. My most memorable story was, and still is, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Please, please do not hurt her. Please give our little girl back.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
For detectives, the first 48 hours after a murder are crucial in the search for clues. The public expects them to find Jill Dando's killer soon. The British detectives are planning to meet forensic experts, academics, and even witch doctors.
I remember the grimmest case, the Soham murders of schoolgirls Holly and Jessica. I felt I can't undo what's happened, but I can help explain it.
Ian Huntley was arrested and charged within a fortnight of the murders.
I've never murdered anyone. I've never raped anyone. What am I in jail for?
The parole board has to decide if Bronson needs to be kept locked up for the safety of the public. My biggest challenge was to persuade a jailed diamond thief to answer my letters. Martin Brunt, Sky News, at the Old Bailey.
Day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle. Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Welcome back to the programme. We may never see the faces of the victims of Sean Diddy Combs. He was once one of the most powerful men in hip-hop. Today, prosecutors say he used that influence for criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labour, kidnapping, arson and bribery. He's pleaded not guilty on all charges. Katie Spencer reports on an extraordinary fall from grace. And a warning, her report contains flash photography from the start.
Once one of the most powerful and respected names in hip-hop, for Sean Combs, known to many as P. Diddy, his much-lauded business empire now described by prosecutors as a criminal enterprise. Details of a criminal investigation into the star's conduct first came to light after raids on his mansions in LA and Miami last March. On Monday, he was arrested at this Manhattan hotel, and we now know more of the criminal charges he faces, including sex trafficking and racketeering. These some of the guns he and those closest to him used to intimidate. Claims that from 2008 his physical abuse was recurrent and widely known, and evidence, prosecutors say, of a pervasive pattern of abuse from Combs towards women, including that he regularly plied them with drugs, forcing them to participate in orchestrated sex performances with sex workers that he'd fly in.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics.
Claims the rapper hit, kicked, even dragged his victims by their hair during some sex performances, and when injured, made his employees prevent them from leaving until their wounds had healed. Lawyers for Combs saying the rapper is innocent and can prove it.
He's going to fight this with all of his energy and all of his might and the full confidence of his lawyers, and I expect a long battle with a good result for Mr. Combs.
In the last 12 months, Sean Combs has faced a flood of multiple sex abuse lawsuits, but criminal charges are a first. A pariah now in the music world, his lavish lifestyle on hold, detained in police custody until his case comes to trial. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
And just in the past few minutes, a judge in New York has refused to grant bail, ordered him to be sent to jail while he awaits his trial on sex trafficking charges. So that's just a bit of breaking news in the last few minutes. The judge has refused to grant bail to Sean Diddy Combs. Stay with us on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Coming up, tackling the climate emergency from Central Europe to Central Africa. We'll have the latest on devastating floods and what leaders plan to do about it.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the programme. Next tonight, I want to focus on the devastating flooding across Central and Eastern Europe. Heavy rainfall is to blame, and another spate of bad weather is set to hit the region this week. At least 19 deaths have been reported, with several people swept away in floodwaters. Slovakia and Hungary are preparing for potential impact this week as the Danube River, the second largest in Europe, continues to swell. Experts expect it to peak over 8 metres. Further south, authorities in Croatia are closely monitoring river levels, and heavy rain is forecast for northern Italy. In Poland, where 5 people have already died, floods continue to impact the southwest of the country. Authorities in the city of Wrocław are working to reinforce riverbanks to avoid a repeat of 1997, when 100 people died after major rivers overflowed. Sky's Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins is in Wrocław and sent this report.
For these people in Poland, the only way out now is by boat. 80% of the homes here in Leven have been flooded, inundated by water bursting out of raging rivers. With little warning, even after the rain has stopped. Tadeusz says it's up to his roof. My children have lost everything, he tells me. There wasn't any time. They told us there'd be water, but we didn't know it would be so high. Military vehicles scour the streets for those still trapped. Some have managed to scramble to safety. Others, like Ludmilla and her family, grabbed what they could and left. Refugees from Ukraine, they've lost their home for a second time. It's very hard. We're adults, but my little one will remember all of this, she says. In Poland, a disaster's been declared, but Storm Boris has left large parts of Europe submerged, wreaking havoc on the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania and Austria.
When you look around this town, everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Authorities are doing what they can to hold back the waters. In Wrocław, they're not taking any chances after a catastrophic flood cut off the city in 1997. Dagna lived through that flood. She remembers these scenes, the people stranded, left homeless, the life lost. She's hoping defences hold this time round.
Some of the stop barriers has been overcome, so we know that some incidents may happen, and then it can still cause a lot of damages like in the past. So I think that older generation is very worried.
And they aren't the only ones waiting for the floods. River levels are also predicted to continue rising in Hungary and Germany in the coming days. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Poland.
Well, millions of people have also been affected by severe flooding in Central and Western Africa. Parts of the continent have been completely submerged. Humanitarian groups estimate 4 million people have been affected this year, with more than 300,000 homes being destroyed. Among the worst hit, Niger, where authorities have reported at least 265 people have died and more than 400,000 have been displaced. 487 people have also died in neighbouring Chad, where over 250,000 hectares of land have been destroyed. And in Nigeria, local officials say more than 30 people died last week, adding to the already 265 people killed this year by severe weather. In the worst hit areas, Maiduguri, towns and villages are completely underwater. Major dam has collapsed and prison walls crumbled, with hundreds of inmates escaping. The UK government has pledged to spend billions to help developing countries adapt and respond to climate change. Today, David Lammy described it as a more fundamental threat than terrorism. Our science and technology editor Tom Clark asked the Foreign Secretary how he was going to deliver on that funding.
How are you going to deliver all of this with so little money?
Well, look, you're right to raise the issue. We have a 22 billion black hole. This is a tough fiscal environment. We're all aware of it. And so, yes, it's a tough environment, and climate finance is going to be integral to that. But meeting the 11.6 billion remains our ambition as we undertake the spending review, and we'll consider all of those spending plans.
David Lammy there will stay with us on The World. Coming up, Donald Trump bounces back. The former president leaves Florida for Michigan to hold a rally days after avoiding yet another assassination attempt.
That has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides. And it's moving this way.
Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, and it's evident that the boat seriously overcrowded. This is one of the most severe viruses in the world.
I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
This is going to be the biggest party Tripoli has ever seen.
That's it. It got us then. There's a lot of action going on, a lot of hits coming in still. We aim to be the best and the most trusted place in news.
Clearly not had very much to eat at all. A lot of them extremely thin and very frail.
Look at her arms. I can put my entire hand round. This is the cocktail of drugs which the doctors at this hospital have been giving their coronavirus patients. Made for people who want clarity in an uncertain world.
Mother Nature can be vicious, absolutely savage. The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Whoa! Close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem. Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Heavy vehicle.
Why only in America? People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the programme. Let's just take you back to New York because as we've been reporting, the hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs has pleaded not guilty to 3 charges: racketeering, sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and transportation to engage in prosecution. Well, in the last few minutes, he has been denied bail after pleading not guilty to sex trafficking charges. His lawyer has now made a statement outside of court. Let's just have a listen to what he had to say.
All right. So this was the first step. We have a bail appeal scheduled for tomorrow at 3:30 in front of Judge Carter, the district judge assigned to this case. I think that we made the points that we've been wanting to make. I think he came out. Mr. Combs is a fighter. He's going to fight this to the end. He's innocent. He came to New York to establish his innocence. He's not afraid. He's not afraid of the charges. There's nothing that the government said in their presentation today that changes anyone's mind about anything. He's been looking forward to this day. He's been looking forward to clearing his name, and he's going to clear his name. And we're going to stand by his side as he does. We believe in him wholeheartedly. He didn't do these things. This was a 10-year relationship. There's no coercion. There's no crime. There's basically just, someone who brought a civil case and now is finding themselves as a witness in a criminal case. And we're going to fight this case with everything we have, as is he. And eventually he's going to be shown to be innocent. And so tomorrow we fight again, and we'll fight every day until we don't have to fight anymore. I don't know. The question is, why did it happen last night instead of today? I don't know the answer to that question. I just want to make one point very clear. We have no power. All we can do is show good faith. He got on a plane and he came here. And if he stayed here for one day before the case started or for 1 year before the case started, he was going to stay as long as he needed to stay. It ends up being only 12 days. That's fine. That's what the government wanted to do. The government didn't want him to turn himself in. He came here to turn himself in. Why doesn't the government want him to turn himself in? Because then they can't ask for detention. So they go and they arrest him. They arrest a guy who came to New York to turn himself in. But we're going to make all these points again tomorrow, and we'll make them as much as we can until we get him out. So that's all I have. Huh? Tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. Tomorrow. Wait, what was the question? We're appealing it. We're no bail. No bail. He's detained.
We're appealing it.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're appealing the decision to hold him without bail. Tomorrow at 3:30. 3:30. Same place. Bail appeal. Bail appeal. Bail appeal tomorrow at 3:30. Same courtroom. Different judge. He's doing fine. He's a fighter. He's a fighter, and he's going to fight this. All right, I'm going to go. Thank you. I don't get into that stuff.
That was the lawyer of Sean Diddy Combs, Mark Agnifilo, who was speaking outside of court. He said he's an innocent man, he's a fighter, and he is going to fight this. That's after the music mogul was denied bail and detained until the trial begins. That's on the orders of the judge. Mark Agnifilo, Combs's lawyer, told the court that the music mogul was in therapy and was a good candidate for home arrest, which the defence had sought on a $50 million bond. Let's stay in America now, where the country is still coming to terms with yet another assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had a call with the former president today, wishing him well. There's no doubt the incident will play a big part in Trump's speech during his rally later tonight. In a moment, we'll dissect how what happened could sway voters one way or the other. But first, Martha Kellner has this report.
That's good-looking stuff right there.
After the assassination attempt comes the glad-handing. Donald Trump meeting the police officers who caught the man who allegedly tried to kill him.
Thank you very much.
He's pivoting now back to the campaign trail. And this is where he's heading, Flint, Michigan. Known for a water crisis which infected its drinking supply, killing scores. A city shaped by the auto industry and shattered by its decline. They have real problems here that feel more urgent than political rhetoric.
If you wear it, if you eat it, if you use it, what brought it to you? A truck. What's the truck run on? Diesel fuel. What's the price of diesel right now? It's friggin' ridiculous. Your eggs are up, your milk's up, farmers hurting, truckers hurting, everybody's hurting.
Trump, I'm a supporter, you know. It was scary what happened with the attempt assassination, but, you know, thankfully he's all right, and I think he's thriving.
He's saying that Biden and Harris's words have meant the bullets are flying.
I really do think that they are responsible for, you know, maybe not calling out somebody to do it, but, you know, their words triggered somebody.
Investigations continue into the suspect Ryan Ruth and his motivations. President Biden has called for more resources for the embattled Secret Service. Trump spoke about the shooting for the first time on X.
All of a sudden we heard shots being fired in the air, and I guess probably 4 or 5, and it sounded like bullets. There's a lot of rhetoric going on.
Right.
A lot of people think that the Democrats, when they talk about threat to democracy and all of this.
He's blaming Harris and Biden, in his words, for sending bullets flying. In the swing state of Michigan, these are the voters he's speaking to. But Gary, an independent, is unconvinced.
That's 2 attempts. I was like, that's kind of crazy, you know what I'm saying? When they saying people was in Ohio eating cats and dogs, now they got school bomb attempts and all that. So the rhetoric on both sides need to calm down.
So it's not one side or the other, it's a collective responsibility?
Yes, it's a collective responsibility.
The unknown is whether the latest attempted assassination will inflate Trump's polling numbers. It certainly won't lose him any fans.
I was going to vote for him before he got shot at. I mean, I'm still going to vote for him now that he has been shot at.
Why are you going to vote for him?
I just feel like that's the right candidate for what I believe in, and he gets stuff done. It's better for our business. Stuff was cheaper. Gas was cheaper. I like cheap gas.
At the arena where Trump will speak tonight, security was enhanced. He will almost certainly, on this stage, repeat his condemnation of what he calls the Democrats' dark and divisive rhetoric. But Donald Trump himself is hardly known for being a calming, unifying political presence. The truth is, even as the political violence ratchets up, little is likely to change. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Flint, Michigan.
Well, as you can see on the clock behind me, there is about 48 days left until the presidential election. And as Martha was saying there, the political violence is ratcheting up as we saw that second apparent assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. Let's just show you these live images now of that campaign rally that Donald Trump is heading to in Michigan. So really the presidential election campaigning has revved back up again today. Donald Trump heading to Michigan and Vice President Kamala Harris answering questions at a forum for Black journalists in Pennsylvania. All while the authorities are investigating the second apparent assassination attempt against Donald Trump that's really roiled the race. We'll be following all of these developments here on The World, but for now, good night.